On the left, we have SCG Tour Players Champs of 2015, Jim Davis.
Hello.
And next to him, we have Pro Tour Philadelphia, that was all will be one, Pro Tour champion Reid Duke. Right in our backyard. All right, guys, so we're gonna start off. I know we asked this question to you yesterday, but people may have not been to the panel yesterday. What got you into Magic the Gathering to start things off?
So it's funny, as I mentioned yesterday, I was basically forced to play when I was in high school. My buddy Matt came in my room with the 7th edition starter kit, and it was the starter pack. He's like, play this game with me. And I'm like, nah, man, totally lame, not playing that game. And I was like listening to Korn, playing Diablo at the time, really cool, 16-year-old or whatever. Eventually, I relented. He forced me to play with him, and he took the red-green deck because there was a foil Thorn Elemental was like the promo card, and he wanted like the cool card. Gave me the blue-white deck, which had Counterspell in it and a bunch of flyers. And by game 3, he was like, dude, man, you're so cheap. You keep countering my spells, and I can't block your flyers. This game is stupid. And he stopped playing, and here I am. So thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Sounds like you got the right deck to start.
Yeah, it was great.
I started when I was 5 years old with my big brother. We got a starter pack of Ice Age and a starter pack of 4th edition, which starter packs don't even exist these days. But yeah, when I was that age, anything with knights and dragons and all that stuff would have really resonated with me. But Magic is such a cool game in the sense that you never run out of things to do with it. Like, there's always another problem to solve, another deck to build. Every game you play can be different. And I think that's why it's kept my interest for so long is, it can never get old. There's always something new.
Awesome. So another question I have, when it comes to your competitive background, I did mention your the titles when I announced you guys, but how about like maybe some of the top 8s you guys got that was a big event, or just other events where you did really well, and just so people can have an idea of like what your experience is when it comes to pro tour and competitive play.
It's funny, my arc has been very interesting. Where back in like 2006 was my first pro tour, and I played in the pro tour about 3 years, most of the pro tours. And only did like okay, I did cash a few events here or there, but I never made like the level at the time where it was, for a while it was called level 3, then it was called gold, but it was the level where you were qualified for everything, the gravy train. And like every year I'd finish like 2 points short of it for like 3 years in a row. And like eventually it burned me out. I stopped doing pro tour stuff, stopped playing Magic for a while. Started playing on the Star City tour, which felt like a cool one-of thing to do. Got super entrenched in that because you just never get away, And then I did really well at that, won the Players' Championship there. I won a few Opens there, which is kind of cool. And then basically retired from competitive play to do content about 7 years ago, where I was like, I tried doing both for a while, and it was just like, it's just not really possible. You can't do, half of one and half of the other. So kind of retired to do full-time content, which is great, and I'm very fortunate. It's why I'm here right now, And then last year, on stream, I just like won a qualifier for an event, an online pro tour. And then I played that pro tour, and I went undefeated in the Swiss, and I got my first pro tour top 8, which is a thing that, 10 years ago I would have literally killed someone for, And now it's like not an afterthought, but kind of like, oh my God, wow, I have this thing now. And then that got me into the next pro tour, which got me into World, which got me to the next pro tour, and I've just been chaining invites ever since. And it's really awesome to be playing competitively again, but it's just funny because it's like, again, the things that I've done in the last year, I came in 5th at Worlds, are things that when Magic was what I was doing 110%, and it was all I really was going for, I would have loved it. And now it's not the thing I'm chasing the most. And I think that's part of it, is that I'm very happy in my life, and I'm very content with the things that I have, my family, my content creation career, but like maybe I'm more relaxed and just playing looser. But I don't know, it's been crazy. So this last year's been one of my best years. Worlds was incredible. And yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of weird that like the arc I've taken overall at Pro Magic.
Yeah, I'll add a fun fact is when I started getting into tournament Magic, maybe 2008, 2009, Jim was already one of the best players like in the area, the East Coast tournament scene. To his credit though, even back then, he was always like really kind and down to earth, and somebody who would give respect to the up-and-coming players, which is not a given. You know, sometimes when you're a big fish in a small pond, that can go to your head. But props to Jim for always being authentic in that way. I reached the Pro Tour for the first time in 2010, and even then, you know, it was a long time getting on the Pro Tour, and even once I made it there, it was a long time, many tries and many failures before I broke through to being successful. But one of those major breakthroughs for me was I won the Magic Online Championship Series in 2011, which was sort of the premier tournament circuit that you could play from home at the time on Magic Online. And that was really cool for me as someone who was not yet a pro player and couldn't really travel, you know, 10, 20, 30 times to big tournaments per year. Just getting to play from home and having a lot of opportunities was really meaningful. Since then, I've made the top 8 of a Pro Tour 5 times, culminating in winning Pro Tour Phyrexia All V1 in February of this year. So that's awesome to have been around for so long and finally just get the exclamation point on a multiple decade-long career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have followed your journey as well. Like I've seen you, and it was just funny because like I've watched, you know, some of your content and seeing you play like through tournaments and pro tours, and then seeing you win at Philly when I was there, I was like, that's awesome. Like that was so cool. And speaking of that, so I guess we'll talk about this now. I saw Jim put out a video of like what you guys did in preparation for Pro Tour Philly, all the stuff you went through, like all the, you know, you guys got the Airbnb and you just went through like reps and planning and ideas. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Start?
Yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really fortunate now. I mean, obviously, Reid's been with Team CFB now forever, working with the best players in the game for a really long time. And, you know, they picked me up last year. It was a New Capenna Championship, I think it was, the first time working with you guys. And, like, same sort of thing where, like, Jim from 10, 15 years ago would have been, I could not even possible to work with this team of amazing people, you know, and now I'm here, and it's just incredible. And the process, I kind of like had like an epiphany. It was round 1 of the Pro Tour in Philadelphia, where I sit down for my draft match. My deck was pretty bad. I play and I win a close match. And my opponent played fine, but not like excellently. And we've been testing in this Airbnb house. Those that don't know, you know, you go a week early, you get an Airbnb, and we all practice for the event. We do drafts and, you know, practice our decks and stuff. And I had been playing for a week against Reid in every draft, against Seth Manfield, you know, Gabriel Nassif, just the literal best players in the world every game I played for a week. And then I played the first round of the Pro Tour. My opponent played okay, but not incredible. And I walked away and I was like, wow, you can actually play against someone who's not the best players in the world. I forgot that was the thing in Magic, you know.
It's like in Dragon Ball Z when they train at 10 times Earth's normal gravity.
Right,
and
exactly, yeah.
Everything's easy once they go back to normal.
Yeah, and you know, and like, I just feel, I mean, I'm almost like an outsider, you know, I'm like the new person on the team, you know, having played for so long, but, you know, when I did Pro Tours back in the day, it was just me. I was going to Pro Tours and I would just practice the Magic Online, you know, kind of just have my own deck or whatever, and like, to be able to work with the best in the world is just like, it's just unbelievable. It's just so awesome, you know, and then of course, Reid winning, you know, so we're in this Airbnb for a week, prepping and all this stuff, and then, you know, to see one of our own win the tournament and host the trophy is just awesome. And then at Worlds, it was the same thing where we were a 4-person team in a 32-person World Championship tournament. It's me, Ili Gassis, Mike Sigrist, and Jakob Toth. And we came in 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. And, you know, and that's like, you know, and I lost to my teammate playing for top 4 of Worlds, but it was my teammate, you know, and I gave a big hug, and obviously I really wanted to win, but seeing the 2 of them in the top 4 was really awesome. And like, it's just a really cool experience to be able to, play in events with your friends and you know, really work together on a thing together as a team. And then again, for me to work with the best players in the world, it's just, you know, I feel like it's like the best players in the world, and Jim, who's here too, yay. He does content sometimes, you know? But yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great question. I certainly want to echo everything that Jim said, but just even from a bigger picture standpoint, I think a lot of non-Pro Tour players, like, it's hard to envision what a Magic team means, because of course Magic is almost always played individually, and once the tournament starts, your own result is just based on how many matches you personally win. So when people talk about a Magic Pro Tour team, what it usually means is the folks that you practice together with. So you practice, you share ideas about decks, you learn to draft, give each other feedback, and often that results in, you'll all show up to the tournament with the same deck, like whatever you decided would collectively give you the best chance of winning. But this is a really great part of the tournament experience for all the reasons Jim said, where it's, even though you're out there on your own, trial by fire, you do have this shared experience. And even if your tournament goes poorly, which that's gonna happen like a lot when you're competing, you still get to have this satisfaction of like cheering on your teammates, or okay, I've been eliminated, but this person's still going, and get that like satisfaction of, you know what, even though it wasn't my turn to have a great breakthrough finish, we did a great job as a team. We figured stuff out, and we put somebody up to this really high finish. So that's very cool. And I also really want to stress like how valuable this is. We're fortunate to have like very, very skilled, experienced players on a team, but even if you're just working with a group of newer players, like similar, like-minded players, it's very, very helpful to have people who have a shared goal that you can work with, whom you can bounce ideas off of, try out decks, have somebody talk you down from the ledge when you're about to make a really bad decision. So this is a good part of the Magic experience, and I think kind of building out your network of players that you can chat with and work with is a good like skill and approach when you're trying to get more serious in the Magic tournament scene.
It's also really fun too. The reality is that like the Philly testing house is a lot of work, but the reality also is that just 12 Magic players hanging out having fun. We're working and we're practicing and playing Magic, but like we're going to all go out to dinner afterwards. We played basketball for a bit. Me and Logan and Martin shot the basketball around for a bit. It's like got for a few drinks here and there, and like it's just it's obviously work, but you're just like hanging out with a bunch of really awesome people, and you're just in a new city doing cool stuff, and it's just really awesome.
Yeah, one more thing to add about the team dynamic is it's not, I think a lot of people envision like you're practicing for the Pro Tour, so all you're doing is playing. And for some people that works, but what I find really valuable about having the team is, okay, I play some games on my own, then I go watch Jim play, then I go have a conversation with Ely about booster draft, and then I check in with somebody what deck they're working on. And it's kind of like the whole experience. You get to learn so much by osmosis, like just by being around really skilled and talented players. And for me, sometimes I show up to the Pro Tour and I haven't done 100 booster drafts. Maybe I've done 9, or I haven't played a lot with the deck that I finally settled on because maybe I was working on a different deck up until 2 or 3 days before the tournament. But because you can tap into this like bottomless well of knowledge, you can wind up being really well prepared and giving yourself a good chance of success, even like if it's not your personal experience and knowledge that you're really leaning on.
Great. So speaking of teams, obviously Reid is with Team Channel Fireball. Like, what do you guys think is the general idea when it comes to that? Is it just doing well in tournaments will get you those call outs from the teams to get there, or is it more so you reaching out to them? Like, what is the whole process if you wanted to join a team if you were like a somebody who's in the Pro Tours trying to get there? What was your like sponsorships and things related to that? What would you guys say?
Yeah, I could start on this. So that's even one more element of why, from a casual fan perspective, the Magic team thing is very confusing, because what I said a moment ago is like a team is a group that practices together, but there's also this element of like, oh, well, these folks are wearing the same T-shirt, they have the same sponsor, and that's another valid use of the word team. So in this case, like Jim and I practice together, and we consider each other teammates, but we have different sponsors. I'm sponsored by Channel Fireball. and Ultimate Guard. And that is something that you can seek out if you think it's a good fit for you. It's can be really nice in that your sponsors can support you financially or help you with your travel expenses or your cards or your your accessories in whatever form that happens to take based on your individual deal. But that's not something you have to do, and it's not something you have to rush towards. It's just, some of the players who have been around longer have arranged these partnerships, and it's something you'll run into every once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's obviously I've known Reid and like a lot of the guys on CFB for a long time. I've been playing Magic, Pro Magic for 15 years or whatever it is, and like it's the, I don't want to say it's like a don't call us, we'll call you sort of thing, but like it kind of is, where and then you'll bring someone in, maybe for example, Jakob. We ended up working with Jakob for Worlds. He was our fourth person on our team, me, Ely, Siggy, and when it came time for the next Pro Tour, me and Ely suggested Jakob to be on Team CFB, and a lot of the players on the team didn't know him really. So it's kind of like, all right, well, we're going to vouch for him. We worked with him before. He's great. Now everyone freaking loves him because he's super young, hungry, spreadsheet guys. He's like the best, super organized. He's great. That's kind of how it works, where it's like I know a person, I can vouch for them, their experience, they have results. It's you need a lot of different things, as far as that goes. But you don't just get on a huge team when you're starting out, just like you wouldn't play Madison Square Garden if you're in a new band, So it's like the thing where like there's nothing wrong with being at your local game store, and you got Sarah and Billy who are really good, or and you just say, hey, let's all work together for this upcoming RCQ or whatever, and just starting there, maybe being on a Discord, or maybe being on a whatever, and like, as long as you're kind of like think tanking and you're just with people who are of a similar skill or hopefully better than you, but not always. I think there's a misconception that you need to learn people who are better than you. I think that there's plenty of times where someone who is less experienced will have a good idea, but they'll be not looked at seriously because they're not accomplished in some way. I think it's not kind of not a thing. But I think you just want to gather people who have a similar goal in mind and work together. And when you have four minds working instead of one mind, it's just better. So I think that you can kind of do it at any level, but you need to start somewhere, which is kind of a locals level, on Discord, on Arena, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it feels like, because I remember, back when events were like 10 years ago, whatever, you would see people with T-shirts, and it wasn't like sponsorships, but just like their team, like they would have like maybe like a 3-letter combination, just some like random teams. Like you remember like back when they had stuff like that, and I feel like that's the dynamic of the team that you guys have, is not so much the sponsored level, but just like the team level where you work together.
Yeah, there's definitely a big differentiation where you mentioned the 3-letter names. Team MGG was my team originally, and we were one of the first teams to like really do like the esports-y thing, where we were not just sponsored by one group, we were trying to be a team sponsored by many groups. We were sponsored by BCW Supplies and Gaming, and the goal was to kind of do the esports thing. I think that though we learned in that process that there's a real differentiation between kind of like sponsorship, sponsored people, and just players, and that's kind of where I started to deviate into the content world, because I was very interested in the sponsorship stuff, in the providing a valuable asset to companies to advertise their products, whereas a lot of players on the team weren't. They wanted to play Magic. They didn't want to stream. They didn't want to do the content creation kind of stuff, and it can be a mix of incentives in that space. So we have this team where Dan Jessup, good friend of mine, great Magic player, not interested in doing content, not interested in doing sponsorship stuff, was on the team. He's a great player. He's crushing at everything, but he's not really interested in that. And then you have me over here doing more content stuff and trying to do more sponsorship, and it doesn't really jive all the time, So there's, I think for the sponsored team things, and for CFB, like it's a one entity sponsoring a team, but we were trying to do like a multiple sponsor thing or whatever. It's complicated, but it's definitely not a necessity, nor necessarily even related to a group of people just working together. So like, it's not like you need to have that, or it's even like a thing that works all the time, because Team MGG obviously lasted 2 years and faltered. But yeah.
Yeah, after dealing with this stuff for many years, I think it's the case that it's not one size fits all. It's just you kind of look for partnerships that are a good match for your goals and your situation. And as Jim said, some folks stream, some folks don't. That's totally fine. And it's just about, you can offer to a partnership, and hopefully you will someday, if you're at it long enough, find one that's right for you.
Perfect. I really like those answers. I'm sure they're gonna help a lot of people who want to get into stuff like that. All right. So another question I have is, when it comes to Pro Tour, like Lord of the Rings, right? The one coming up in Barcelona at MagicCon Barcelona. Are you guys like? How do you feel about the Lord of the Rings coming into the modern metagame, and that's going to be what you're working with from that Pro Tour, and also the drafting for it as well?
That's a really cool element of not all Pro Tours, but many Pro Tours, is they're connected to, say, a new set release or like a recent change to the ban list, and it's you're setting all the pro players loose to see who can find the best way to make use of the new cards in a limited span of time. So it'd be totally fine for us to have played a big modern tournament last month, but it's even more fun with this infusion of new cards, where it's like, oh, how good is the One Ring? Is this the real deal, or is it just too expensive and clunky? And I don't know the answer, but hopefully I will within a couple weeks from now. And yeah, the awesome thing about Magic is it's such a multi-dimensional game when it comes to competition, and a huge portion of that is the deck building element of, like let's find the best strategy, the best way to use the new cards. So it's a multi-step preparation process where let's find a good deck, let's have a really good version of that deck, let's play well, and you got to cover all those bases if you want to be an elite competitor.
Just cool too. As someone who grew up reading the Lord of the Rings, watching the Lord of the Rings, it's like if you told 18-year-old Jim that he'd be playing in Pro Tour Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering, his head would have exploded probably. It's really cool. I've enjoyed the draft so far. It's a fun, flavorful format, and it's cool, like Reid's saying. It's fun to have a format where you have this new thing, and back in the day, like a long time ago, before the internet was so prevalent and there was so much communication and like the hive mind and arena games just firing off so frequently, teams would break the format. They'd show up with a deck and no one expected and crush it. It doesn't happen as often these days, but it still can happen. There's always that feeling of like, ooh, did someone break it? Did they find, is Frodo really, really good and we just didn't know about it, or whatever. So it does add a real air of excitement to it, versus having a more stale format or something like that. So I'm excited for it. I'm pumped.
Dude, you could be Pro Tour Lord of the Rings champion forever.
Again, 18-year-old Jim's brain just exploded. So
yeah. So outside of Pro Tours, though, I mean, I know it's few and far between, but like, you guys do a lot of content. You'll play, like Jim does all his brews and stuff like that. Do you guys, outside of like what you're doing with content though, do you do like a lot of like those brainstorming things, like or just reps of just trying different decks out off of stream because you're planning for the Pro Tours, or is it all just right before the Pro Tour you kind of get into it?
It's challenging. Whenever a Pro Tour is tied to a new set releases are very busy for me when it comes to content. Obviously, I do a Bronze to Mythic run and draft. I do 10 new brews, set reviews, and all this stuff. So it is a kind of a challenge for me to kind of get all that stuff done first, and then when you're on a team, you can't be really testing online because then you're just saying, oh, I got Reid's deck here. Oh, let's play it on stream and see how it is. Reid's broken deck or whatever. So there's definitely a point where you kind of need to draw a line, and it can be very challenging. Because you don't want to be disingenuous with your audience, and like be like hiding things from them. But you also need to be like, hey, listen, like I have an event coming up. I'm probably going to stream stuff up until this point, and then I'm either going to take the time off because I have to travel to the event and so on, or I'll play different formats or whatever it is. So for me especially, as someone who's hardcore full time, doing YouTube and everything else, it can be quite challenging. I also need to kind of like bank up the content because we do the testing house. I leave a week or earlier, I'm gone for maybe 9 days. It has to be 9 days of YouTube all banked up too. So a lot of times for me, it's like I really enjoy the testing house because that's my line where I grind really, really hard up to that to get all the content done, and then I can go to the house and now, okay, I'm free. No more content, and I try to separate it in the event too, where I don't update Twitter during the event. I don't really talk to anybody. For me personally, whenever I'm playing an event, I like to be kind of just isolated and kind of just do my thing, not think about, the reaction from people who might be watching, or, I think people mistakenly, I see this a lot, they'll post on Twitter every round how they're doing. I think that like when you're doing that, you're adding another element of like, you're in a match playing and you're losing, what am I gonna say on Twitter when I lost the round or whatever? It's like there's like a real extra element. So for me especially, when it is Pro Tour time and I'm there, I try and be like, all right, that's it. Content's done. Now I can focus on practicing for the next week, playing in the event. I can focus on playing the event. When the event's over, I'll hop back on Twitter. I'll do like an end of day roundup or whatever, but for the most part, I think it's challenging but important to kind of draw that line and draw that distinction.
Jim covered that really well. We've had like extensive conversations with our teammates about sort of best practices around this stuff, because Jim and I have the conflicting responsibility as, for our work, that we want to truthfully share the best and most exciting ideas we have with our audience. But then we also have a responsibility to our team, and, kind of matches my concept of sportsmanship as a competitor, that I should be trying my best to win, to put my best foot forward for the competition. And you just want to balance those things, and a lot of times that comes with just cutting yourself off at a certain time, like within the last week or 10 days before the Pro Tour. You'll sort of go dark when it comes to your public persona, and be like, okay, I'm practicing off stream, and I'm trying to privately come up with the best ideas and best knowledge that I can to give me and my teammates an advantage.
So I want to riff off of something Jim said earlier about the posting on Twitter. Some people do it. Like a good example that I actually just remembered when you were talking about it. Brian Koval, he's Bosch and Roll. He was the Legacy SCG Legacy tournament recently, like the 10K. He was posting his wins every time, and then when he came and did his recap video, he would just go over the Twitter post and like make like notes and stuff, and that was like his way of doing it. So if that, do you think that like him doing that, is that like, could you talk more about that? If you think that was, you said it wasn't a great idea, but if you could talk more about it.
Everyone's different. I think that like, everyone has to find the mental approach that's best for them. And for me, I like to not be thinking about anything external in a tournament. Like my wife will tell you, like she'll, how are you doing? She learned very early on to not ask how I'm doing, because she would ask me and I just wouldn't respond because I don't want to talk about it. I'm playing in my event. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be kind of explaining it. Even during the event, like we'll talk, how'd you do the round? Oh, this happened or whatever. A lot of times, if I lose, I'm just like, all right, I lost, whatever. Like if I have a question about the game, I'm like, hey Reid, I kept this weird hand. What do you think about this? When it comes to like the actual result, I try and just sort of like play every round, don't think about the overall big picture of the event. I'm just gonna like sit down, play a match of Magic, try and win. I'm gonna keep doing that, and eventually they're gonna stop me and say, hey Jim, the tournament's over, and either you won or you lost, and that's it. That's my personal mental approach. Does it work for everyone? I don't know. Reid, I don't know what your approach is. Whatever Reid does works very, very well, because Reid is unbelievably good at being down and not being down about it. Like he started the last PT 0-2, rattled off like, I don't know how many wins in a row or whatever, and had 2 win-ins for top 8, which to me is so much more impressive than me going 8-0 on day 1, because obviously I did bad on day 2, but the reality is that it's very easy to lose those first 2 rounds and like be down about it, or hop on Twitter and be like, mull to 5, justify it to your people watching it, whatever. Oh, I just got unlucky or whatever, or just finding some way to kind of justify it and make it okay that you're doing bad and kind of just check out, and not doing that's very important. So
yeah, a lot of competition is cultivating a mental space where you can just perform at your best, and as Jim said, that's going to be different for every person. But for me, I'm with Jim in the sense that I really like to sort of clear my mind and my schedule. Like one thing that I actually have built a habit of is I never make plans for day 2 of the tournament, because it's like you don't want to give yourself that escape hatch. Like, hey, I'm here because I'm gonna complete the whole tournament and hopefully do well. So I'm not worrying about like I'm gonna go to the museum or I'm gonna play the side event on Saturday. So that's just a strange thing that works well for me. But yeah, if it's easy, if you're a content creator and you can convert your tournament into good content, that's awesome because the fans love that. I know me as a fan, I love watching people who do that. So the idea that you mentioned from Brian Koval of like tracking all your stuff and then being able to retrospectively go over it, that is very cool if you feel that it works for you and isn't distracting too much from the competition. Yeah, just whatever works.
Yeah, there's definitely an issue of, you know, like you're saying, trying to figure out what's best for your content and what's best for your tournament. And the thing is that I look at the Pro Tour now sort of as my, not like vacation, but like it's me time, you know, where I get to say, there's a point where as a content creator, your entire life could just be your content, you know? I'm eating this, picture, picture. I'm here at TooManyGames, here's a video, you know, like, and everywhere you go can be content. So like, you need to draw some sort of a line where like, okay, these things are for me. You know, for me, like, for example, me and my wife play Zelda on the Switch. That's our personal time. People will say, you should stream it. And I go, nope, that's our time, that's my time. You know, and for me, at this point in my career, the Pro Tour for me is my time. You know, where would it be beneficial to me to stream it and do more content about it? Yes, but there has to be something that's mine as a content creator that I can do myself. So I kind of treat it like that, almost like it's a different game, if you will. And there's definitely a battle between, you know, is the value of making the content worth more than the value of the event? So if I'm gonna play in a tournament where first prize is $1,000, whatever, let's say, you know, if I were to make content about that, would I make more money, or it would be more beneficial to me overall to just make the content and play a silly deck and not even try to win or whatever, you know, and do good content, or try and win EV-wise, you know? And I think that like, probably EV-wise, it would be better for me to do just content right up to it, do content at the Pro Tour, not join a team and just whatever. But like, again, as a content creator, you have to draw a line somewhere. And so for me personally, the Pro Tour is like my kind of my own thing, my vacation thing or whatever. And you can take vacation time, which that happens to be also Magic, but I'm kind of just stepping away and doing my own thing.
Yeah, it's sort of, even Pro Tour aside, this touches on the bigger conversation of work-life balance because, you know, content creator or professional Magic player, these are not jobs where you clock out at 5 p.m. Like, you can just always do more and always feel pressure and always have the gears turning in your brain. And I think it is important to be able to, like, give yourself some space where it's like, I'm not doing Magic right now. I'm doing something to let myself breathe and live a healthy, balanced life. And then that winds up reflecting better on your work in the future if you can.
So I did have a question specifically for Jim, but after hearing about your headspace, it's probably not a great question anymore, but I'm still going to ask it. So when you're doing the paper Magic stuff, you know, when you're in Pro Tours or whatever, do you ever wish you had your soundboard next to you and you could just like press buttons?
Not when I'm playing seriously. There are times where I'll be like recording a video for cool stuff where I don't do the soundboard stuff and I will instinctively reach for it. But I think that's a headspace thing, you know, where that's, you know, I almost have to like turn off my content brain and turn on my competitive brain. Like the first day at the testing house is usually me kind of like recalibrating myself. And then the first time home, usually my first stream home back from a Pro Tour, I'm just like kind of quiet. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be like having like entertaining, you know, like people say I look angry when I'm playing serious Magic, you know, because I'm not angry, I'm just focused. That's my focusing face, you know. And what they're used to seeing me doing is going, oh, look at me, I'm, you know, Leroy Jenkins, you know. And so there's definitely a recalibration, I think, of kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do this now, I'm gonna do that now. So I would say no. When I'm playing an actual like, you know, pro level event, I've tried to turn that part of my brain off, but I do have to turn it back on again to do my content.
It's interesting getting to know Jim without his public persona. He doesn't even like goblins in real life.
Don't tell them that, come on.
All right, so I think I'm gonna ask one more question before we get to the audience, and it's gonna be, when it comes to like brewing new decks, when you're specifically trying to get for Pro Tours and like just having that little secret spice that you think nobody else found and stuff like that, what is the and you were saying it doesn't happen a lot because people are coming out with new videos and like you're gonna see this deck that you're working on, somebody may have just come out with a video for it and it's like, well, that's in the bin, you know, like you don't want to mess with that. But if you do end up getting that secret spice and nobody came to it and you bring it to an event, like how does that feel? Like what is the whole like mind space that you get into? Like you're just trying to, because I've seen it happen where, you know, somebody will bring a deck to a tournament and it just kills the tournament. It just destroys the tournament. As the player who has that deck, how does that feel? Do you What do you think?
It's rare, but it feels good. I recall the SCG Baltimore, maybe 2016, was the tournament that I won. It was the first event where Team MGG worked together. We were not officially like out as a team, but the 5 of us worked together for the event. We came in a day early. I think that wasn't commonly done for the Star City events because they're lower stakes events. We came in Thursday, worked all day on Friday, and Shadows over Innistrad had just been released. So it's a brand new format, brand new standard format, and we built the Banned Company deck. And it was unbelievable. There were 5 of us. Only 4 played it. Andrew bailed out for whatever reason, and Pete didn't do well. But I came in first, Dan came in 10th, Kevin came in 11th, and we had a number of team kills in there also. And that deck was like just the best deck by far, at least up until that point. And it felt like we were playing Modern and everyone was playing Standard. It really is a really powerful feeling of like, holy crap, this deck's just so good. Like I have Tile Tracker and they just don't, or whatever. Doesn't happen very often, but it does feel really, really good. But I think it's like a little overstated because like that happens so rarely that it's not usually your focus, where the focus is more just like, okay, I'm planning this event. I think there's going to be these 10 decks or whatever. Who's going to play what and what numbers? And then what can I find that matches up the best against those? And kind of just like finding the right niche, finding the right deck for the tournament. And it's not as exciting as like, oh, I have this crazy broken deck, but yeah, it's basically it.
Yeah, it's sort of the dream as a competitive tournament player that you can show up with some secret awesome deck that nobody else has, and you're sitting down to your matches just going like, yeah, I have a big advantage over the player across from me. Like that is a really special feeling, and it's not going to happen that often, especially in the modern day where like everyone's really good, everyone has a really good deck. And then I also want to make the point that like you can't go too far in chasing this feeling. If you work on your brew and it comes to be 24 hours before the tournament, it's just not working out. Like you really need to be able to jump ship. That is a huge skill that people need to learn in preparing for tournaments. Because like, maybe I played with the One Ring for a few weeks trying to break it, and if it doesn't work out, like I have to be able to switch to just stock Izzet Murktide, and it's a crummy feeling to be like I worked so hard and now I'm just playing the same deck everyone else is, but that's still better than the alternative. Like being a good player with a basic level deck is something that is just going to happen sometimes, and you have to accept that and be prepared for that outcome, even though you of course try your hardest to come up with something new and have that advantage, and then maybe 1 out of 10 times you actually have something really, really good.
Yeah, I've been guilty of chasing that dream before. Being the one who's just like keeps just trying the brew, and then 11th hour, like we were saying earlier, the voice of reason was someone to be like, hey, Jim, maybe you shouldn't play that deck, so yeah, it's very alluring.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we are going to bring it to the audience now. If you guys have questions, you can just walk up to the microphone. We'll start people lining up. We're going to do questions from the audience at the mic this time.
Hello.
Hello.
Question is probably more so aimed at Jim, but Reid, you might have something to say on this too. What was it that made you change to content creation and pro Magic as your career from your lucrative career as a writer for Garfield? No, seriously. How do you balance all the content that you make, since it's around a set release, it's packed into such a tight space?
It's tough, honestly. Like this week in particular was very, very challenging. I was at Command Fest Orlando for 5 days, came home Monday. I had to start Bronze to Mythic. I had to do my 10 new brews. Didn't sleep much this week, honestly. Now I'm here, it's tough. I think that I'm still working on that. I think that even after all these years, I'm still trying to find the right way to schedule things out. And because Magic is so saturated these days, there's so many releases and so many new cards and so many formats, and they'll release like, an extra, here's an Aftermath set, it's an additional set to this set. Oh, it's a Special Arena release now, or an anthology or whatever, there's a lot of stuff. I'm still working on it, honestly. I don't really have a good answer, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm still working on it. You find an answer, let me know.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, because part of a job I took recently is creating content. One of my friends is a content creator, so I have to balance out a lot of making thumbnails for this and then promoting that. And so knowing that there isn't a formula for it it gives me a lot of hope and confidence in myself.
Yeah, I hired an assistant recently, like about 4 months ago. He's been very, very helpful. And it's funny though, because I was talking to Nicole about it, and I'm just like, I hired an assistant. I still don't know what I'm doing. You know, like it's like so. It's just an never-ending battle of just trying to figure out the best way to do things. And like the reality is, you're just gonna have crunch time. You know, whenever there's a new set out, it's just gonna be really busy for a week or two, and there's no real way around it. It just kind of is what it is, and you kind of make sure you try and ebb and flow with it. You know, so you recognize that okay, I'm gonna be really busy this time, not as busy here. I can try and workload it out, you know, to do different things at different times. So.
All right, thank you so much.
I can give a concrete example that you might find interesting. My work with Channel Fireball, one of our best and most popular offerings is the Luis Scott Vargas set review for the new set. And we find that people just really want to read this, and they really want to read it quickly because it's, you know, to capture the hype of the new cards. So what we'll do is we'll open up a chat with like Luis and me and our editors, and we'll be like, okay, this is the date that the full card gallery is going to be available. Everyone clear your schedule. We're just all at our computers working on this day to like churn it out and get like the high quality content just literally as quickly as we can. Almost like, you know, getting the scoop on a big news story, and just planning ahead for that stuff, you know, really is important, because if you just kind of take this like laissez-faire attitude and let things fall into place, like, you know, it'll be fine, but you're not going to fully capture all of the excitement that you could.
Hey, I'm personally a more casual Commander player. Is there a particular format or formats that you would recommend for someone who is trying to get into more competitive 60-card formats?
Good question. I'm not sure. I mean, like, Modern and Pioneer come to mind as formats that are like, you know, not too old, but, you know, have a lot of the older cards you might be familiar with. Yeah, I guess Modern or Pioneer. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tough question. There isn't an easy answer for like what's the entry-level competitive constructed format. I think each person is different. Like, you can kind of check in with your resources and your limiting factors. Like, so for some folks, it's going to be budget. You know, like, oh, buying into Modern is just too expensive for me. That's fine. For others, it's going to be, you know, finding a play group, or what's fun for you, or how much time you have to practice. But you know, checking in with what your collection translates well to, I think, is a good first step. But yeah, you know, if you already have a Commander collection, like maybe going to Pioneer or Modern would be a good first step.
I think it's style too. Like, you know, for example, Standard's going to be a little more on the board. The game's going to be a little longer, a little more creature combat and stuff. Whereas if you're more of like a combo player who likes to do bigger things, like Modern, there are combo decks, there are, you know, more linear decks and so on and so forth. So there's an element of that too. But yeah, I mean, just welcome to 60 cards.
Great, thank you.
Hey guys, if I could, I wanted to ask Reid, back in 2013, the first time I ever watched a competitive high-level Magic game was you playing green-white Bogle's deck. Is there a story of how you came about that? I kind of wanted to know what the behind-the-scenes was.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for bringing up a you know, cool old memory. So that was the World Championships in 2013, and you know, Jim and I have talked a lot about the team dynamic of having a big team to practice for the Pro Tour. This was very different, actually. So the World Championship was a 16-person event, and I was kind of one of the newer people on the scene. So I had a different approach to my preparation, which is I mostly was on my own. I tapped into my friend Huey, William Jensen, who was not qualified, but was just available to help me bounce ideas and practice with me. It was also a tournament that had 4 formats. So, you know, practicing for one format in a big tournament is stressful enough, but having to split your time and kind of master 4 different formats is very, very challenging. So I knew I wanted to employ some sort of like time management and resource management strategies to cover my bases as well as I could. And in Standard, I just played Jund, which was the deck that I already had a ton of experience with, and kind of knew that I was going to play that and close the book on it. And in Modern, my goal was to choose one of the like really linear, single-minded decks that maybe could just hit the metagame just right if things broke well for me. And I found Boggles, which was very good. It was under the radar, like it wasn't nearly as popular as something like Affinity or Dredge, which had these targets on their back. And it matched up well against some of the decks that I expected to face. Like actually, my opponent in the finals was Shahar Shenhar, and one memorable thing in practicing for the tournament was I had created like a burner Magic Online account with a phony name or whatever, and I just played against Shahar on his normal account. He was playing his Jeskai deck that he ended up registering for the tournament, and I played Boggles, and I was like, wow, like this is awesome. I just crushed him. I have such a good matchup against this deck, and if I could actually get this matchup in the World Championship, that'll go just according to plan. That went according to plan up to a certain point. Shahar ended up beating me in the finals, funny enough. But that was, I think, an example of like what I would like to think was good tournament strategy in both in terms of like finding a good deck for the metagame and having the right approach to both that format and the multi-format competition in general. And as a less experienced player playing Boggles, I had a perfectly fine chance of beating even some of the best players in the world. Your Josh Utter-Laytons and Brian Kiblers and Luis Scott Vargas is out there. Like so, even though the result was not first place, I was pretty happy with that tournament.
Thank you.
All right, this is a question from chat, so say hi to chat. Pro Tour, the next Pro Tour, what would the format be? If you could pick any format, what would you be playing? And why is it two-headed giant?
Man, that's tough because that's kind of like similar to the question of like, what's your favorite format, Jim? And I get that a lot. And my answer is always just a variety. I just like a bunch of different things. I don't know, honestly. A cube draft Pro Tour would be really cool. That'd be fun. I played the first two-headed giant Pro Tour a million years ago. I did not. It's weird because I didn't really enjoy that tournament, but they chose probably the worst possible set in the history of Magic to do two-headed giant with in Time Spiral, where the main mechanics were Sliver and Storm, two things that are just incredibly broken with two players doing the same thing. So I guess that could have skewed the experience, but yeah, I'll say cube, I guess. That'll be my answer. A cube draft Pro Tour would be pretty wild. I don't know how you curate that, how you decide what the cube was, how you'd actually run it, but I'm in.
Yeah, it's a fun question. I'll just kind of like stream of consciousness, some thoughts that come to mind, but I really love Limited, and the most fun aspect of practicing for Pro Tour definitely is drafting. In the old days, before my time, they used to have all draft Pro Tours.
They were great.
Yeah, you got
great.
to play some of those?
A few of those, yeah.
So that would be amazing, but I'm not going to get greedy. Like right now, I'm just very thankful that there is a limited portion represented in the Pro Tours. A couple other memorable formats that I got to play was one time I played Legacy at the Pro Tour level. This was at the Team Trios Magic 25th Anniversary Pro Tour. And Legacy is like my favorite constructed format. It's really, really fun. It's not played at the Pro Tour level in part because it can be like prohibitively expensive for somebody who doesn't have a Legacy collection. That's fine, I get that. I also really liked Block Constructed back when we used to play this because this was an example of having to find the best way to use the new cards in a new environment. So it was, imagine a new set comes out, and it's not just a couple drops being dropped into the huge bucket of the modern card pool. It's actually like, these are the new cards, and this is all you have to work with. Do your best, good luck. And that was a fun challenge as a deck builder and a player to have to come up with something in a short time span. So, another format that's not widely supported anymore, but Block Constructed was fun.
Block was cool. I like Block Constructed.
Hey guys, I know neither of you are big Commander players, but with more and more big competitive EDH tournaments coming up, not coming up, but in the past, and prevalent Eternal players like Bryant Cook and Brian Koval took down 2 pretty big tournaments in the last 6 months. What are your opinions on a format like that? In competitive EDH.
Like CDH?
Yeah.
I am very ignorant to it, and I honestly, it seems very paradoxical to me. You know, when I do dabble in Commander occasionally, it feels like board game night. It feels like, I'll just hang out, have a beer or two, and just play some games. It doesn't really matter who wins, and so on and so forth. And I feel like my instinct, I don't know this for a fact, obviously, is that the Commander format can't really handle the weight of like people trying to actively break it or like do the most optimal thing possible. So it just it seems very weird to me that there would be this like competitive Commander community, which there is and cool, and I haven't done it, so I don't know. Doesn't really appeal to me at all because if I'm going to play competitive Magic, I want to play 60-card Pro Tour formats or whatever. Yeah. And if I'm going to play Commander, I just want to mess around or whatever and not really think about it. So like the confluence of the two is very, very odd to me. I'm happy folks like it. I think it's awesome that Magic players can play Magic in so many different ways. But I definitely don't know much about it, and it just feels weird to me. So I don't really have a good answer.
That's all right.
I think CEDH is cool. It's just another one of those like, all right, this is a fun new deck building challenge. So it almost, similarities to Vintage in the sense of like we have all these broken cards at our fingertips. Let's find the best way to use them, and that's cool. The multiplayer dynamic is strange, or I should say foreign to me as somebody who plays almost exclusively one-on-one, and that introduces some wrinkles to the competitive scene. And then another question is like, what's the replay value? Is this a format that's still going to be fun in the same form after you've played dozens and dozens of tournaments against the best players? So that these are all questions that I'm excited to like find answers to, and I would love to even play some tournaments myself if I have the opportunity someday.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I'd say I'd worry about the multiplayer aspect the most of like, typically multiplayer Commander games are sort of like, I'm just going to attack you, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be spiteful to you, and this is all fun. But I feel like there's probably an optimal game theory way to handle a multiplayer game that could end up like Prisoner's Dilemma, just sort of like not very fun. Like the optimal thing is just to not talk or to not make any deal or whatever it might be. And like, it's the kind of thing where I feel like once you optimize it fully, it doesn't seem like it'd be fun to me. Maybe it is, but I don't really know that. I'm just kind of like, that's just my instinct off the top of my head. But the multiplayer aspect is definitely very, very odd.
Yeah.
An additional thing, sorry, you want to ask a follow-up question? An additional thing that's weird in a very competitive multiplayer scene is like the reputation. And this is something that I find very distasteful. Like I kind of want to always sit down to a new game with a clean slate. With I mentioned earlier, like my concept of sportsmanship is like you sit down and you're just doing what you think is best to try to win the game yourself. But with reputation, it's like, oh, if I sit down and I against the known best CEDH player, like, should we all team up and try to beat that person? Or alternatively, like, should I try to like brown nose and like suck up to that person so that maybe they'll give me they'll help me out at some later time. Like both of those things I find distasteful, and I think there was some element of that in the very old days with the Rochester Draft Pro Tour format, which this was, for those not familiar, it was like basically a booster draft that you did face up. And I would hear these stories of like the very well-known players had reputations where it's like, oh, this person goes for this color, or don't mess with this person because they'll pay you back double in counter drafting your good cards. And again, all this stuff, like that's not the fun aspect of competition for me. Like I just want to sit down, have a clean slate, and do my best to try to win.
Sure. The only thing I was just going to say is that with so many, like, as I said, Brian Koval took down 2 pretty big, like, 150-person tournaments in the last 6 months. So you would think 100-card singleton would make every single game super inconsistent. But I was just saying it's clear that with a high enough level skill, then people can be very consistent with it. So
Yeah, I totally believe that, and I'm not well versed in CEDH, but just coming from a vintage background, I do find like vintage gameplay to be surprisingly like one of the most challenging and skill testing, even though you would think about it as like, oh, this person went first and had Black Lotus and I lost automatically. I think that's the exception rather than the rule.
cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we got time for like one more question.
Just want to say, like, so I've been playing Magic for actually 30 years. So the anniversary is great. I started when I was super young, high school, playing around, and I've onboarded a lot of new players throughout the time. And it's always really difficult to do. And as the history of the game gets longer, it's even harder. So my wife is now learning how to play. She loves it, but it's like, it's overwhelming to start somebody new. And you always need new players if the game's going to exist. So you have to onboard new players, new and new. So how would you recommend the easiest way to bring in a new player? Is it a specific format? Is it a type of play? Is it a type of deck? How do you recommend bringing new players into the game?
I think that speaks to the importance of local stores. Friday Night Magic, local stores, local stores obviously struggled in the last few years thanks to COVID. And then also there's just a real lack of kind of unity in formats. Some local stores have Commander now as their F&M format. Some have Modern. There isn't really like a set thing where 10 years ago, every Friday in every comic store around the world, you're walking in and playing Standard or drafting at 7 o'clock. That's it. And it was a great on-ramp for, you just do a draft or two. Standard is the easiest format to get into as far as card availability. So I think that, local stores are kind of like the backbone of that. You bring your buddy to your local store, they come down, or maybe someone, sees cards online, if they're a Lord of the Rings fan, and they see, oh, this is kind of cool, what's this? And they come into a local store, someone is there to kind of guide them. You would hope a local store is very welcoming and nurturing, hopefully. Obviously not all are, but I think that that's really the element in place where the community aspect of the game can be shown, and kind of like, the shared excitement. If you go to a local store, you see there's 13 players there playing Standard and they're all super pumped about it. It feels cool, and you want to get involved with that, and learning on Arena might be a little easier because you can just kind of like sit at home and play, but like you don't get that kind of community aspect, the gathering aspect, so I would say local stores are very important. I think Arena is good too, obviously you've got to learn Arena, it's pretty easy to kind of just play on your own pace and your computer and stuff, but I think that seeing the community in action is really important.
I love this question, by the way. It sort of touches back to a conversation we had a few minutes ago. There's not a super easy entry-level constructed format. To like the first time somebody sits down to play Magic, I recommend, there are some entry-level products like these, dual decks or whatever it might be, or I'll just go grab a stack of like vanilla creatures, monocolor deck to sit down and teach someone. I think Limited is very good for teaching someone the fundamentals of the game, and it has the advantage that you don't need to have a collection or a deck built ahead of time to play. Everyone's on equal playing field. Jim mentioned Arena as a really good place. And then, if someone chooses to go further, starting them off with like, nice monocolor Standard or Pioneer deck can be the next step. But yeah, many of my friends who are not like regular players or super enfranchised tournament players, it's like they'll just come do a booster draft or a sealed deck every once in a while when they feel like it. And I think that's a great home for a newer or a more occasional player.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
So yeah, we're just gonna wrap up. Why don't you guys let everybody know your socials, where they can find you online, or keep track of your Pro Tour coverage that you're not gonna post on Twitter.
So I'm Jim Davis MTG on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok, and on Instagram. So on everything. And I do streaming during the week usually. I have a YouTube video every day on my main channel. I do a series also called Bronze to Mythic, where I have a separate YouTube channel where I draft my account from Bronze to Mythic. And yeah, that's where I'm at all the time.
Yeah, I'm on. I occasionally stream on Twitch. My name is Reader Rabbit, but much more commonly and frequently, you can find all my written and video content on Channel Fireball. And I also, in addition to looking up Jim and me, I also want to encourage people to just tune into these big tournaments because it's really fun, even if you don't have like aspirations or you don't care about the results of the Pro Tour yourself. it's just like a really fun spectacle for basically any Magic player to enjoy. The commentators make it like great fun, and they kind of talk you through it even if you don't know all the cards on the screen. So I would encourage you, like, just try it out. For me as a Magic fan, if I'm not playing the Pro Tour, like, that's the Super Bowl for me. I'm gonna clear my schedule and I'm gonna watch it. So I'd really encourage everyone to try it at least once, like tuning in and watching a big tournament.
Strong agree. And then also, I write for CoolStuffInc.com. I forgot to say it last time. So I do articles for CoolStuffInc.com as well. So.
All right, thank you so much, guys. That's it. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.